Okay, so we are going to continue my conversation today with Emmy Award winning actress Erin Cherry. And we're going to talk about some shit I'm learning by reading the arts and leisure section of the New York Times, which, if you're a serious artist, it's something you've got to do every single day. We're going to talk about that. Come on, put the phone back in your pocket. Let's go. And hello, my fellow daydreamers. I am Charlie Sandlan, and you are listening to Creating Behavior. It's early in the morning. Wally is in bed. Trish is in bed, and it's the best time to talk to you. So, I guess on my home front, we're moving to New Jersey, and I honestly don't know how to feel about this. I lived in New Jersey for 3 years when I was at Rutgers, so I lived in New Brunswick, and I did vow to never live in New Jersey again. But, the realities of living in Manhattan, I'm telling you, they're fucking real, and, we need more space, and we just can't afford it, We cannot afford what we want here in New York. So we're doing the smart thing. We're moving to Weehawken, which is right across the river on the water. So, the commute's going to be relatively easy. Not that I really have to commute anywhere right now because I'm teaching from home. But psychologically, to be able to see the city is actually very helpful. Trish, on the other hand, she's having a meltdown. You would think we're moving to Omaha, Nebraska. Like, babe, we're literally right across the river. We're on the water, actually. So, you can just look there and see the city. So we're dealing with that. Next week's the big move, boxing up everything and whatnot. But last night I was daydreaming about how would I love to see Donald Trump suffer. And the best thing I came up with as I was lying in bed was anal cancer. I was going through every disease possible. I thought, well, what would be really just fitting for him? Now, I mean, him catching coronavirus and being laid up in a hospital bed with a ventilator would be, I know there would be some poetic justice in that, but no, I think anal cancer would be really wonderful, and that it was a slow, long, painful disease. I cannot stand listening to him. He's just poisoned everything about this country. He courses through our day like this just insidious disease, this cancer that we just can't seem to cut out of our body. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that pig. I want to talk about something that I think you guys need to do. All right? And, you need habits, creative habits, that you instill in yourself. Excuse me. And, Twyla Tharp talks about this. It's called the habit of creativity. And, a lot of actors don't have the discipline that they need in order to, feed themselves, to continue to grow, to continue to inspire and teach themselves. And this is what you have to be able to do. And I will tell you right now, the one thing that I think that you can build into your life as a consistent habit is reading the arts and leisure section of the New York Times every day. It's easy to do. You can download the New York Times onto your phone. You can read it any time of the day and night. And I just think it is something that, as an actor, as an artist, you need to build into your life as a creative habit. It's one of the best ways to be able to just keep yourself informed about not just what's going on as an actor in this country, in the world, but you will learn about other artists, other art forms, not just here in our country, but around the world. You will have your finger on the pulse of what is going on artistically and culturally in the world. It will make it easier for you to find inspiration, to create, to collaborate, to engage in conversation in an intelligent way as an artist, which hopefully that is something that you actually want to do. And I wanted to share with you something that I learned recently from reading the New York Times Arts and Leisure section. There was an incredible article. It was rather long, actually, for a New York Times piece by Roberta Smith. She is the co-chief art critic of the New York Times. And she did a piece on a woman named Rosie Lee Tompkins. And Rosie Lee Tompkins was born in the late 30s. She grew up very poor. She actually grew up picking cotton in the South. But she spent her life artistically making quilts. And, I mean, who doesn't like a good quilt? That's about as far as my knowledge of quilt and quilt making goes, is that I love to curl up with one. But this woman, over the span of her life, and certainly her artistic life, 30, 40 years, made a collection of quilts that is absolutely stunning. It is improvisational quilt making that was deeply reflective of the African American experience and how deeply embedded the whole history of quilt making is to the African American experience, which I did not really understand. Her work really was as close to a reflection of what pop art is. And some of them were absolutely stunning. And in the article, there are many photographs of her quilt. Some of them are just enormous, 14 feet by 14 feet. She would use bits of American flags, dish towels, tapestry, Mexican textiles. And her work is finally being recognized. The Berkeley Art Museum is having a retrospective of her entire body of work in December. And you can actually right now go to the Berkeley Art Museum website and take an online tour, a virtual tour of this retrospective. It's amazing. And I wanted to read for you something that Roberta Smith said here in her article at the close, which I just think is very important and was just eloquently stated, and it's this. Her work is simply further evidence of the towering African American achievements that permeate the culture of this country. A deeper understanding and knowledge of these, especially where art is concerned, must be part of the necessary rectification and healing that America faces. End quote. It's made me think. It's made me contemplate, certainly as a teacher, as someone who has taken on the responsibility of educating and shaping actors and artists, of my personal responsibility on promoting and propping up and advocating more forcefully for black artists, black actors, black playwrights, indigenous people of color and their work, of actively educating myself so that I can educate others, which I think is very, very important. And so I encourage you to find ways to educate yourself, okay? And reading the Arts and Leisure section of the New York Times is a no-brainer, so just fucking do it. Okay, learn something. And share it with me, actually. I have a new component to my website, Creating Behavior Podcast. It's called SpeakPipe. And if you go to the contact page, you can just press a button on your phone or your computer. You can leave me a voicemail that I will get directly sent to me. And I would love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear something that you're learning. Share something with me, And one of the great things that I'll be able to do is to share some of these voicemails, some of these comments on the show. So please, I welcome your participation here in our continuing discussion, because hopefully I can learn something from all of you. That being said, let's get to part 2 of my conversation with one of my best friends, Emmy Award-winning actress Erin Cherry, who won an Emmy for her Amazon show, After Forever, last year. And let's just pick it up. You, in an interview, were asked once what your superpower was, and you said that it's the politics in your voice.
Yes, I think so.
Can you, so, I mean, I thought this might be a good time to segue into some more pertinent, serious conversation. You know, we are in a racial upheaval in this country that's been, 400 years overdue. But can you just talk to me, like, what do you mean by that? Your politics in your voice, and as a black woman in this business, what does it mean?
Mhm. A lot of Black artists are get afraid to really jump into who they are really. I find this is just my experience with people around me in my world, and we really have to encourage each other to not be afraid. If we say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, being blacklisted or not being able to work again, things of that nature. And I find for me, my politics is my superpower because you've known me for a long time. I came into this white institution, very radical, very black, unapologetically, right? And that was my superpower because that's what made me unique and it makes me unique. And so when Maggie, Bill, and the way we teach bring your unique self to who you are and your characters, when I audition or when I read a play, and my unique point of view of why I say what I say as far as the character goes, it's going to be different than 30% or 50, even 70% of the actors, even if they're black, walk into the room, because I just have a unique way of looking at the world. And so that's going to serve me and it's going to protect me in the sense of I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but I will not stay silent. And you're starting to see a lot more artists of color, specifically Black actors and artists, starting to have that voice. So I feel like that voice is going to be a superpower for a lot of us because a lot of us are tired. We don't want to stay silent anymore, and we can't be afraid. Um, and that's another thing. It's this when you're seen as a person who speaks truth to power, people think you're fearless, and they don't realize that there's still a lot of fear there. It's what makes us the convictions that we have or I have to keep moving through that fear, regardless of what the outcome may be, even if it's my life being taken in some way, which I don't want that to happen. But you have to any kind of change, you have to speak truth to power, and that for me is a superpower because not everybody has the courage to do it.
So let's just talk about what's been going on in the last 6 weeks. How you're feeling and what it's meant to you as a black woman, as a human being, as an artist.
This last 6 weeks, well, it's been hard, pretty much being a black woman on the planet. I will say that, but the last 6 weeks specifically have been very heartbreaking and shattering and hopeful. Just so many different mixed emotions. Um, what comes to mind for me right now is the protest. I've never seen anything like it. I think a lot of us are going through this feels different because a lot of us have never seen anything like this. But growing up doing protests or protesting, even in my adult life, I've always just been with Black people, right? Protesting to make change and falling on deaf ears. Or you look at history and you see um, many Black people trying to make change with the legislation or the Black Panthers or different things of organizations that we see out there. And for me to see in my lifetime where the whole world is coming together for Black Lives Matter, it gives me hope in a sense of, okay, this, we cannot go back. This has to bring change in some way. Because if you tell me that millions of people around the globe in countries all over this world are protesting over George Floyd's murder, which is the catalyst for this to happen, and we go back to being normal, that I can't even put the feelings that I'm going to feel, the anger and the rage I'm going to feel into words, because it can't be, okay, we're in this pandemic and I just want to go out and march. Because the fact that people are risking their lives in a pandemic to go out and march says a lot, that you're risking your life to march against this murder because you want change. That's what gives me hope. Um, and it also makes me scared because of the powers that be. They see this, they see the same images we see, and then it causes them to fight harder and fight back. And so we see this administration doing exactly that. And so it makes me nervous about what the outcome's going to be before we get to the other side. Like these next couple of months before this election is going to be very scary, because the fear has always been, and my parents talk about this. I've read these in a lot of many books, and Fred Hampton spoke on this before he was murdered. It's that having people of all different backgrounds, economic backgrounds, poor whites, poor blacks, poor indigenous people, just coming together and saying no more to the establishment, right? And when that starts to happen in history, you see how the backlash happens. You start to see assassinations. You start to see legislation being changed. You start to see rules being changed, and that's what we're seeing now again in a different way. And so the fear of them being backed into a corner. But hopefully, for me, I would really love it to be the last dying breaths of this. Like I really want us to move forward, and I would love to see in my lifetime an actual progressive change towards a place of peace where everybody's created equal, that we can really see that happen.
Well, I mean, it starts with people like me, the white progressive liberal who thinks that they're not racist. We're the ones that instituted racism. We're the ones that have kept it in place. We're the ones that have put the policies that have made the systemic oppression of people of color part of the fabric of America. And there needs to be a white reckoning. Mm-hmm. And I will just say to you, I owe you an apology, because
you made me cry.
Well, I do, because, I love you. You're like a sister to me, but I have, mm-hmm. And part of our dynamic has been me just always kind of ribbing you and teasing you about Black power. I'll hold my fist up and, we'll laugh because, it's like I just think to myself, oh, she knows I'm not serious, but it is absolutely unacceptable. And it's a denigration of, what you've been fighting for, your parents have been fighting for. And so I will never, ever do that again. I will never tease you. I will never make fun of your activism. And so I just want to say I'm really sorry that I was too blinded to have seen that insensitivity in myself.
Yeah, well,
it's got to start somewhere.
Yes, and I'm moved. I'm just going to take that in and say thank you.
It. But I appreciate it. I don't even need a thank you. I just, as long as you heard it.
Yeah, I did.
I think one of the things that is long overdue, and I think it's probably thrown people, is the artists and actors in our business that have been standing up. You read the Dear White Theater mm-hmm. letter. Mm-hmm. It's all over Instagram. It's all over a very damning, assessment of what theater and what that experience is for people of color. It was brutal. It was honest. Can you just talk to me about like what that letter means to you and your experience as a Black woman in this art form?
Well, it means I don't work as much as I want in the theater. I would love to see more of us and some really telling, beautiful Black stories off off Broadway, and on Broadway. Um, uh, these theaters have a subscription base that's predominantly white in a certain age group, and they have done what they can to cater to that that demographic. And if you want to be the change, you have to be the change you want to see. And the theater should absolutely stretch people, push the envelope, and force people to love beyond the prejudices that they have. And so when you don't see that happening in the theater, it makes you question, what is your real intent? It's like it's another form of institutional racism, another form of institutional slavery, in a sense that, yes, we're getting a paycheck for doing work, but yes, you're writing these grants, you're doing all of these things, to say that you're inclusive to get the money, but then you produce predominantly white male playwrights or white women, or you have white directors to direct Black plays. There's so much conversation that needs to happen because why can't a Black man or a Black woman direct their own plays? And why don't we have that? And why don't we have a lot of Black directors directing on Broadway? Why is
Yeah.
it just Kenny Leon and Lisa
And there's
Tommy and,
more there's
two or
more than
three,
just
George
there's more
Boyle?
than just August Wilson and Lorraine Hansberry. So
Exactly. And so those conversations need to happen. And so it's like, after the conversation happens, I want to see action. And it's going to be interesting to see when everything starts to open up who's really doing the work right now. We're in the middle of a quarantine, so the work can be done. It's going to be interesting to see how that's going to change when things start to open up, and how these white institutions, theaters, who do they have on their board? Who do they have in leadership of power? And how are they going to reflect what it is that artists of color are saying, right? And so I don't trust right now, given the nature of just the country. And so I'm in a position of, like, I'm just going to wait and see, because I've seen too many times where we've had panels after panels of discussions and talks and what it's like to be inclusive and that word
doesn't go
diversity,
anywhere,
and nothing
right?
happens. So until I see change, I'm not going to trust it.
I heard you talk in an interview, and this is something that I don't think any white actor has ever had to really consider, like just going in and getting your hair done for a
Oh,
show or on a set, and like what
yes.
as a Black woman, as a person of color, like what is that? What's the issue?
The issue is the unions, and I'm learning this myself because my hair person, Angela, who I love, Angela Linware, she's in the union, and she can do hair and makeup, but we as Black artists, Black women specifically, can go on these sets and we want to request someone, but there's no one in the union. And so the unions have to change. There are plenty of Black women and Black men out there who can do hair, and you cannot tell us that they're hard to find. And white men and women in the hair and makeup department, they may think they can do certain hair, but they can't. And when you try to say, this is how I want it done, or this is what you have to use on my hair grows out of my head differently. It's natural. This is the way God made it. And then they don't know what to do. That's a real issue, because especially if you're on a set season after season and that person's in your hair, you want your hair to be healthy. You don't want your hair to fall out. We use different combs, we use different products. We have oils that we put in our hair. There's so much that needs to be understood. And so, with the dominant being whiteness, and that means white hair, and then you come in and now everybody's trying to diversify and be inclusive and have different people even behind the scenes. It's our time to really push for that, because I do want to see more Black men and Black women who know how to do natural hair or know how to do Black hair behind the scenes, because it's very important. I think My personal feeling is that it hasn't happened yet is because black hair is very political, right? If you see a black woman wearing a specific hairstyle, you can pretty much get a sense of who she is, right? If you see a black man with a certain hairstyle, like for instance, some men will have locks, and that comes with so many different stereotypes, which I'm not going to even get into, but that causes for a certain, a point of view. And there's plenty of men actors and women actors out there who some have locks, right? And they may walk into the room and be the best person for the part, but because there's no one behind the scenes who knows how to do locks, or they might be afraid of that look, or they may not want to approach that person because of their locks. They don't want to, it causes too much problems because I have had men friends with beautiful, gorgeous locks. And these institutions, these sets, these corporations, will ask them, "Are you willing to cut your hair?" And it's like, why do they need, or me? Why do they need to cut their hair? Especially if it's a spiritual thing, especially if they're not ready to cut their hair. Why can't you just deal with the hair? And so it becomes a whole political conversation in that sense too, because everything about blackness is politicized, regardless if the black person themselves politicizes it or the systematic oppressions implement it, right? Because this country was built on the on the back of black people, and so that itself is political. And so our hair is seen as political. You see children across the country, even in Africa, getting expelled because the white principal or they think that their hair is unkempt, and it's like, nope. In our culture, in our community, that is a beautiful style of freedom. But they don't want us to be free. So if they can do anything they can to keep our hair down, that's another form of way of controlling, and that has to stop. It has to stop.
Yeah, yeah. Have you had any specific experiences as an actor where you have received just like overt racial, conflict, where you've been made to feel uncomfortable, or is it just like that underlying kind of insidious, it's there but not really there kind of thing?
Um, Most of it has been underlying issues, but I have been. I'll go back. Most of it has been underlying in the sense of like, I know right away when I'm in a room and the person directing or the person producing or another actor is immediately intimidated by my intensity, right? Because I'm a very intense person. Even if I'm, and I don't have to be at a 10, I can be at a 2. That's just how I am. I'm very intense. I have a lot of humanity and I could just sit and just be intense. Or if I get quiet, people get nervous and they don't know what's going to say because they automatically think I'm going to be, and goes back to our conversation we're having about being in the Meisner training program and letting out your anger and your rage and how scary that is. And so you walk into a room, you don't even exemplify any of those characteristics. And there's people who are afraid that if they say the wrong thing to you, that you're just going to pop off at a 10. And I'm like, Black people are not walking around irrational beings, right? If I pop off at a 10, it's for a reason, right? I'm not just going to walk into a room and just pop off at a 10 because.
Just because
But
you're an angry Black woman.
Yeah, exactly. And an angry Black woman it's very positive for me, but a lot of people see that as a negative. And so I get it. And so for me, going into a room and feeling that energy right away, I have to start to qualify how I want to respond. I have to really go through my mind and think, okay, how do I want to say this? Or how can I say this? And even sometimes when I go through all that work and say what I have to say, it still becomes an issue. Where I have been in shows where I've seen white male leads pitch a fit, mess up the set, kick a chair, throw a tantrum, and they're at rehearsal the next day, and everybody's like, "Oh, great!" And if I
Oh, you'd
did
be
that,
fired.
I'd be
Yeah,
blacklisted or
absolutely.
fired. And I could never. And there's times where I feel I should fucking kick a chair because you're not listening to me, but I have to think bigger picture. I have to think, okay, if I want to be doing this at Cicely Tyson's age, at 80 or 92 years old, because I want to have a long career, I can't kick a chair, even though I would be in the right.
See, this is all part of
Right.
the white privilege that, it's embarrassing to say, but at 50, like, I finally recognize that. That is a privilege, certainly as a white actor, that you have. It's the same thing with children. I didn't even know what adultification meant until I started really educating myself in these last few weeks. How
Mhm.
black children, they're
Or seen as an adult.
yes,
Like
you're
that's why when
difficult.
they
You're
see a
you're a
12-year-old,
problem.
yeah,
You're boisterous. You're
yeah,
argumentative.
mhm,
Where the white kid is,
and they're 10 years old.
yeah, where the white kid is precocious and boisterous and playful and cute.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
carries into adulthood as well.
yeah, and society sees our children older than they are, right? And so to be 13 to 14, like you see images of police officers in the schools, which hopefully is starting to change because a lot of states are taking the policemen out of our schools, the urban schools. They call them urban schools. But there's no way a police officer should be slamming a 12-year-old because she is having a bad day. She's 12, right? And so these standards that are placed upon us, where is a white child at 12 is having a bad day, she's going to get asked why she's having a bad day. Well, she's going to get coddled. And meanwhile, we don't know how this young girl who's black, 12 years old, what's happened in the house, or if she just lost a parent, or if somebody died and she's having a bad day, and you ask her to put the phone away and she is frustrated and she rebels. 12-year-olds do that. I mean, I'm not a parent, but my friends who have teenagers, that's what they do, especially a tween when you're 12 going on 13. And so the psychology is not fair, right? It's like the way the brain develops for children is not equal because it's like the white children are given that freedom to allow their brain to grow and the way that it grows, just the way of being human, and black children are not. We're forced to grow up earlier than we are, and you see it all the time where white America will see a 14-year-old girl and see her as a
Right.
woman, and it's just disgusting to me. It's just very awful.
Do you think that activism needs to be just part of an artist's life? Can you be an artist and not have activism as part of what you do? And I don't know what that activism would be, but like just using. I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but you're an activist, you're an artist, and I guess is that necessary? Is that essential?
Um, I feel, for me personally, I can speak for myself. Yes, it should go hand in hand, but there are a lot of actors and artists who don't, right, for whatever reason. And so I find it. I guess it goes back to the way that we teach. Is like, what kind of artist do you want to be in the humanity of another person, and why we encourage our students to read different books and read different memoirs of people, right? It's like, um, and should we include, if we're going to say, hey, read Stanislavski and then also read James Baldwin. Oh, hey, and then make sure you read, Meryl Streep's book, or you know if she has one out. I don't even know. She might have one out, but just reading different artists, right? But seeing where they get their love of art comes from, but also seeing if they have convictions or not have convictions, and if they do, great. If they don't, why? And I've run into a lot of artists who are like, well, I don't watch the news. I can't. I'm not a political person. I don't care about history. I just want to act. And it's just like, well, how are you going to be in the shoes of another person and really live out their humanity? Because one, you have to do research on the parts that you pick, regardless of who you play, depending on the time period. Like, there's a dramaturge in the plays. There's a person on set who gives you the history, the background of the plays. And some actors are like, I don't care about that. I just want to say these lines and do it. And then it makes me think that you're for self. If you're an artist that really wants the world to change and you want to use your work to change the world, you have to be an artivist in some way. And that means doing the homework and doing the work and reading, educating yourself. Where did the love of arts come from? Well, we talk about this all the time in our teaching too. When you look at doctors and lawyers, they're always keeping themselves up with the latest laws or the latest medical, or the latest surgeries. They're always going back and taking classes. It's like they always have to go get recertified in some way. And I'm not saying that we have to do that as actors, saying that maybe we should have a recertification program in our art. But the thing is, like, you should always be reading, you should always be taking in, you should always be learning other ways of living. And also too, knowing where the arts come from, not just with the new group. You can go back to the Greeks. You can go back to the continent of Africa. You can go back and see how, yes, even though we as artists, we go back and we go, the new group, Stella Adler, Meisner, Stanislavski, all of that. Acting was around before them. The Greeks, you travel, you go to Rome, you see remnants of the stage, right? You go to Africa, you see pieces of how the African people are oral traditions. They pass stories down orally by telling stories. So I just feel like I would ask, why are you not hungry to know those things as an artist? Because if somebody asks you about your art, you should be able to talk about the Africanas. You should be able to talk about African. You should be able to talk about the Greeks, the Romans, Kabuki theater. You should be able to talk about all aspects of theater that do not stop with these white people of the group theater. It goes beyond them.
You need intellectual curiosity and you need empathy towards human suffering. And if you do not have those two things, how can you call yourself an artist or an actor?
Yeah, I agree. But some people do. And I'm just like, well, not the people I want to be around. Yeah, I agree.
You know, what I love about you is like I learned so much from you. I'll just share this story. Juneteenth. Okay. On Juneteenth.
Oh my gosh.
This is my stupidity. This is my white.
I was so mad at you. I was like, what is he doing?
Everybody, you're going to love this. I got up on Juneteenth. I'm like, all right. I posted a portrait of Abraham Lincoln. And literally 30 seconds after I did that, I get a text from you saying, what the fuck are you doing? Get that off. I was like, I don't understand. He freed the slaves, you know?
That's why the movie The Lincoln needed to have Frederick Douglass in it.
This is true. And all of a sudden, you just crashed into my ignorance. And, I want to thank you for that. And I learned something that day. But white people are so fucking stupid when it comes to race. And now
it's all by design too, though. And this is what I would say. This is what when I talk to a few of my allies, because it's been a lot of text messaging, a lot of emails. I pick and choose who to respond to, though, because it's overwhelming right now. Because white people are starting to become white and woke, as some of the kids say.
White and woke.
And white and woke. And so I just feel like you're like the book White Fragility, right? Robin talks about that when you grow up in a country that is designed built on racism, you have to accept the fact that you have been on the recipient side of that. And so when some of my allies get upset and everything and they feel bad about it, it's like, but it's by design. And so you have to look at that and say, okay, yes, I get that it's by design. Technically, in quotes, I'm going to put quotes, it's not really my fault because I was brainwashed. It's not in our history books. The powers that be are making sure that I don't learn about other cultures. But now that I know that, that's where the work happens.
Well, my fellow daydreamers, thank you for staying around, keeping that phone in your pocket. I hope that you learned something. I know I certainly did. Thank you, Erin Cherry. I fucking love you. My friends, if you like this show, subscribe to it. Share it with your friends. Review it for me, please, on any of the platforms that you stream this show. It would mean a hell of a lot. Like I said earlier, please go to creatingbehaviorpodcast.com. I'm using SpeakPipe. Leave me a voice message. Give me some commentary. Share something with me. Educate me. Give me something to think about. I will share your comments on the show. Lawrence Trailer, thank you for the music. I fucking love this song. Listen, I want you to play full out with yourself. Can you find some time at some point this week to operate outside your comfort zone and don't ever settle for your second best? I'm Charlie Sandlan. Peace.